Today I'm showing you how to replace the valve cover gasket and cam adjuster seal on a 2001 Audi TT with a AMU 225 horsepower engine. So first thing you want to do is remove your engine cover. Those two bolts there. Pull this back, get that out of the way, and then you can see there's quite a bit more stuff on this than there is on the 180 horsepower version of the same car. So what you have to do is you have to get this charge pipe out of the way and start getting some of these vacuum lines out of here so you can get access to this. So first thing you want to do is just pull these hose clamps off here. There's this heat shield up here. You got to get that heat shield out of the way. To access this hose clamp, you may need to use a 6mm socket with a 1/4 inch drive to get this one off here. Remove these two clamps, just 13mm nuts. Pull those off there. Those just unhook from the back like this. Same on this. And you can pull this off here. These, hose clamps, they can always be spun in different directions, and sometimes they're easy to access and sometimes they're not. Depends on the last guy that worked on it. I'm sure this has been off several times now on a car this age. So you just loosen that up and then loosen the other side up. These right here on these hose clamps are usually crimp style clamps from the factory. This has been off several times and someone replaced it with screw clamps, which works out kind of good for me right now, but those aren't you may have to either cut the clamps off or just try to open them up before you can remove them. So I'm just going to unscrew these, and then I can pull these off and pull this whole aluminum pipe right out of the way. It's either going to be a 6 or a 7, for these hose clamps typically. So if you have the other style, sometimes it's easiest just to, if they're stuck on there real hard, to just use a pair of end cutters. And you can kind of just lift this up out of the way. That the best you can. You may need, depending on how stuck this is, you may need to use a little seal pick to get these hoses off, and then just pull this right off there. So I'm just gonna set it on my pile of garbage over there. And it's a good idea to, if you're not going to be removing this down further, just to put a towel there, a rag, something to block off debris from getting in there. You don't want to accidentally drop a bolt or nut or whatever into that hose, and that'd be a problem. So now what you can do is start removing the bracket and start removing all this vacuum stuff here. So looks like 5mm. Everything kind of, it's pretty hard to screw this stuff up because everything kind of falls back into place when you're putting it back together. But if you're not 100% sure, you may want to take some images with your phone, or if you want to do it old-fashioned, you can draw like a diagram, or you can just watch this video again if you're not sure how it all looks when it's done. This little nut here bolt comes off, and then you can remove this vacuum accumulator. May need a pick to get right here to pull that off. Sometimes these can fight. You want to you don't want to pull on it too hard from the back side, because you can potentially just break that barb off, and then you need a new vacuum accumulator, which probably isn't a big deal, but it might be nowadays as you're getting older. So once you get that out of the way, the hold down bolts for the coil are the bracket bolts for cylinder 2, 3, and 4. So those are all coming off no matter what anyways. And then there's a little bolt here that you also have to get off there. And then loosen up this clamp here. Once you pull that out of the way, you can see how this wire here, this little ground for the coils, is routed on top of the bracket like this. Just pay attention to how that went. That attaches to the valve cover right here. And then you can kind of move this whole thing out of the way. What you're going to want to do to get more room here is pull the little diverter valve vacuum supply off. Not a lot of diversity in the style of bolts they use. Most of them are pretty similar in length. All the coil bolts are all the same length. So there's not, even though it seems like quite a bit of fasteners have to come off, they're pretty much all, you know, there's only a couple different styles. This still has the factory clamp on it. So with this, you can just kind of move it out of the way like this, and then you got good enough access now. So now you can pull the rest of the, oh, you know what I'm going to do first? I'm going to remove this bracket here. You can, to remove the bracket, you have to pull this pin out. Like this. A grommet tool works better than what I just did, but that's fine. And then you get a long 6mm Allen, and you go at it from the front. So $6mm, like this. This is why this the AMU version, the 225, is a little bit more work than the standard 180 horsepower TT. And it charges a little bit more labor. So, this little heat shield kind of blocks your access. But there it is. So now you can get the rest of these coil bolts out of here. We'll hold down. To group those all together. Then you can pull this little coil ground bolt off so that you can lift up the whole coil harness all together and move it out of the way. I'm gonna take this hose off right here to swing this up so I can take the whole coil harness and just move it up over the top of the air box. So that's what I'm gonna do now. All right, now that I swung that up out of the way, all I have to do now is just remove these these torque fasteners for this rear heat shield, so I can get to the rest of the bolts that hold down the valve cover. It's just 4 of them. I think it's a I'm using a T27 here. It's probably a T30. Probably not using the right size. They weren't real tight. So I'm just gonna move that out of the way the best I can. Now get this little breather hose off. And these style clamps, I like to just do this. Loosen that up like that, and then push this off the back. And you get a 10mm socket, and you just start unscrewing all these nuts. Not trying to do a tool review here, but this is my snap-on 4-inch drive cordless ratchet, and my helper actually bought a Milwaukee Torch brand cordless ratchet, and I prefer his to this one. This one's had trigger problems and some other issues, and just overall the ergonomics of it aren't quite as nice as the Milwaukee, and it costs much more. So I would say maybe just order that one. If I'd had to do it again, I would. So I haven't had it for that long, really. So I mean, the jury's still out as far as how it's going to hold up over time. But it's Milwaukee has a pretty good reputation too. So you just want to it's on studs, so you want to evenly kind of try to get it up off of them the best you can. There. Once it releases a little bit, you can fight this off here and just remove it like this. So here's the cover. Here's the gasket. So I'm just gonna pull this off. Sometimes they'll get very, very stuck, and you'll have to use a little pick to get it off. But the cam adjuster seal's underneath here, so I'll show you how to get to that in a minute once I get this valve cover gasket off here, and I'll show you the tool you need to do this. All right, now this is the tool that you need right here. It just screws in down here like this. It goes right between these two little upright aluminum things on this tensioner, and this brings down that shoe, so it takes slack off the top of the chain. Sometimes, depending on the position of the chain in the shoe here, you may need to turn the engine over until it kind of jumps upwards, so you have enough slack up top where when you start to screw this down, you get slack, because depending on the position of it, one cam might be pulling one way or the other. This is working out good for me just by chance, but if that's the case, you can just turn the engine over slightly, or you can even bump the starter if you're careful, or you can just get a 19mm wrench, box wrench with the offset, and turn the engine that way. But there you go. So now the top of the chain has slack on it. You want to get your T27s and release these. Or get your one T27. Get those up out of there all together. The 3 that you see right here, and then and there's one more back here. That one's inside the valve cover. So you just remove those all together. They're all the same size. You'll notice this one will be oily. The other ones are dry. It doesn't really matter if you screw them up and mix them. But yeah, now this whole tensioner here is loose. You can see this whole thing is loose. So with a pick, you can get in here. There's little steel dowels that you can kind of pop this little plate out with the pick like this, and then I'm not going to be able to show you in the back, but you kind of do the same thing in the back, and then you can take this, hook it, and pull it out like this, here's your tensioner gasket. You can do the same thing with this this half moon. This is actually the culprit. That's usually what's responsible for causing the leak right here. So you can get those both out of there, and then you clean that off with some brake clean. Sometimes you'll see a lot of buildup at this this one's not a good example, but sometimes you'll see a lot of buildup, and you'll have to go in here with a pick and kind of scrape this until it's nice and clean, and spray brake clean on it and scrape it and brake clean until it's really nice. But this one looks pretty good, so I'm just going to spray it down, wipe it, and kind of stick everything back together the same way it was. I'm going to put the half moon gasket in just like this. There's enough room where I can get right to it, stick that in. No, you don't need any sealants or anything like this for this portion of it. No silicone, nothing. Just put it all on dry. Make sure your stamped steel gasket is pushed onto those studs the best you can with your little pick before you drop this tensioner back down on it, like this. Tighten that all up real even, and then undo your tool afterwards. And then, just like any other valve cover gasket job, what I like to do on these is put them on all dry, no silicone anywhere except for in the very corners. A little blob of silicone here, a little blob of silicone here, back here, and right here. You know, just on both sides of this tensioner, and then both of these corners. Just that's it. That's what the factory did, and that works well. So everything else is just dry. Clean everything the best you can. Put it back together the same way you found it. So, thanks for watching.